Welcome to ITV News Central. These are the stories making our headlines tonight. The sixth above inflation rail fare rise in 7 years. Campaigners say commuters are lining the pockets of private companies.
At this point in time, during austerity, it's just immoral.
Payout for the family of a diabetic woman who died after hospital staff failed to carry out a glucose check.
A fire destroys a Starbridge cricket pavilion for the second time in 6 years.
And lighting up the skies, stargazers are treated to this meteor shower.
Good evening. Rail fares are likely to rise again next year by an average of just over 4%. On some routes, they could even go up by as much as 9%.
There's been an angry reaction to the news from commuters. They say wages are not keeping pace with the fare rises and they're finding it harder to afford season tickets. Here's our transport correspondent, Keith Wilkinson.
The view from the train window has been costing more year on year. Next year will be no exception. From January, rail fares are likely to go up by an average of 4.1%. Trade unions say in 7 years, fares have risen around 40%. Average wages in that time, just 15%. Ben Whitehouse commutes for 4 hours every day between Wrexham and Birmingham, where he works for the City Council. He pays £4,000 for a season ticket. If it keeps going up, he says, he'll be really struggling to carry on with his commuting.
It's the biggest outgoing I have each month. I pay the most money on train costs. It's unfair. I haven't seen a corresponding bump in my wages from work. I'd much rather be in work than out of work. And it's unfair to expect commuters and passengers to be facing the most fees.
Hello ladies, spot the railway.
Fare rises are linked to inflation figures. The unions have been distributing leaflets at Birmingham stations calling for a fairer deal for passengers.
3.1 inflation increase. Train operating companies can put another 1% on that straight away, with a leeway of an additional 5%. So in total, rail increases, the fare increases of 9%, way above inflation, way in excess of the wage increases that anyone could expect at this point in time during austerity. It's just immoral.
But the Transport Secretary says the rises will help pay for massive improvements to the rail network.
Nobody likes to see train fares increase. I don't like to see train fares increase. But we're here this morning on Nottingham Station. Here you're seeing a huge amount of investment, £130 million being invested in our railway network. This is being repeated across the country. So Birmingham Station has £600 million redevelopment, Reading an £800 million redevelopment. What we're doing is we're investing for the future of our railways, and we're also investing in new rolling stock too.
But the unions say shareholders and rail bosses are taking too big a slice, and there are even calls to bring back British Rail. Keith Wilkinson, ITV News.
A simple blood test could have saved the life of a woman who died after a nurse failed to monitor her diabetes properly. Margaret Pits, who was 55, suffered brain damage because her glucose levels were not checked.
The NHS Trust has apologised and paid compensation, and Mrs. Pitt's husband says lessons must be learned as he learns to live without her. Wesley Smith reports.
David Pitt, finding some comfort from his daughter at home in Redditch after a trauma which turned their lives upside down. David's wife, Margaret, a diabetic for 30 years, was admitted to a specialist ward at the Alexandra Hospital, where her glucose level fell dramatically, with disastrous consequences.
She was left in a hypoglycemic coma, unarrested, for a number of hours. I think it was about 6 or 7 hours. By the time she was discovered on the morning of Saturday, the 13th of November, at 5:20, it was all over.
Margaret had sustained severe brain damage and she died a few days later. Had a nurse carried out a simple blood test, it would have instantly highlighted she was at risk. But this didn't happen and her system went out of control.
This has been a shocking case because it concerned a very ill woman who had a very dangerous disease, type 1 diabetes, where she was in hospital, she was in a specialist ward, she was being looked after nurses who had been specially trained to look after her, yet a vital test wasn't taken and it meant that it had catastrophic effects.
Worcestershire Acute Hospital's NHS Trust issued a statement in which they say a number of improvements have been made to our clinical processes and our staff training programmes to ensure these mistakes don't happen again. They say we again offer Mrs Pits' family our unreserved apologies over the failures identified in Mrs Pits' care. Dave is now learning to live without his wife, and some may find his attitude surprising.
I hold no feelings of malice towards the hospital, nor to the Worcestershire Area Health Trust. I don't even particularly hold any feelings of malice towards the nurse that failed to provide basic medical care to a type 1 diabetic. She, after all, has to live for the rest of her life with the knowledge that she played no small part in an unnecessary death.
David has received an undisclosed sum from the Trust and assurances that their procedures have been amended so no one else has to endure the fate suffered by his wife of 35 years. Wesley Smith, ITV News.
The West Midlands is experiencing the biggest increase in house buyer activity in the country, according to a report out today. The number of would-be buyers looking to enter the market in July saw the strongest growth in 4 years, according to the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. It says the West Midlands and the North East suffered more than most since the market crash. It's believed that this is a further sign that a housing recovery is around the corner.
Firefighters have been tackling a fire at a car repair shop in Washwood Heath. The fire service was called just after 11 o'clock this morning. The blaze involved a number of burning vehicles as well as tyres that had caught fire. 4 fire engines were on the scene. The fire has now been extinguished.
John Brooks, the Staffordshire drummer with the band The Charlatans, has died. The 44-year-old from Burntwood had been battling a brain tumour. He died this morning at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham with his family at his side. The band's lead singer Tim Burgess said on Twitter, "We are torn apart. Love and thoughts to John's family." The pavilion at Lye Cricket Club in Stourbridge was badly damaged by fire on Saturday. It's just 3 years since it reopened after a previous fire.
Members there think the fire was started on purpose, but they say they rebuilt the pavilion once and they'll do so again. Callum Watkinson reports.
Members at Lye Cricket Club in Stourbridge should have been celebrating the ashes this week. Instead, they're cleaning ashes up. Fire all but destroyed their pavilion on Saturday night. The club lounge is gutted. These 2 lifelong members not feeling much different.
It's really sad. What can you say? I'm speechless in a way.
You're devastated, aren't you? I mean, I was having a drink with the lads here Saturday night. I left at 9 o'clock. We just won the match.
As loss adjusters move in, there are dark mutterings of a curse at the crease. This is the 5th fire in the club's long history. 6 years ago, the destruction was total.
The last time was in 2007. That time we still had a wooden pavilion, so that went up in total ashes then, burnt to the ground. This time, fortunately, an alert Bobby called in the fire brigade round about the early hours of last Sunday morning, and the fire brigade came and were able to limit the damage, but it still feels a bit like a curse on the club.
I feel absolutely gutted, to be honest, but what can we do? Like, we've got to rebuild and start again.
If I couldn't come here, I don't know where I should go and watch cricket somewhere, one of the other local clubs. That's the only answer. If this never got off the ground again. But it will, I can assure you.
Lye are top of their division in the Worcestershire League and are well on course for promotion. They say the fire won't stop them. The Black Country Beer Festival will still go ahead here in November and double as a launch event for a relief fund to pay for repairs. Callum Watkinson, ITV News, Stourbridge.
The social networking site at the centre of a cyberbullying controversy says it will announce improvements once an independent audit of its site and safety is complete. It follows the death of 14-year-old Hannah Smith from Lutterworth in Leicestershire. She took her own life after her family say she was the victim of internet abuse. In a statement, the brothers behind askfm said on Friday, "We will be in a position to share with everyone the changes and improvements we plan to combat online bullying and harassment."
A deaf couple who escaped unharmed from a fire in their bungalow at Burbage in Leicestershire were alerted to the danger by specialist technology installed in their bedroom. A vibrating pad under their pillows acted as a smoke alarm which woke them, along with a blue flashing light. They were trapped by the flames and rescued by a policeman who broke a window. Fire crews are still sifting through the rubble to try and find out what caused the explosion.
ITV News has learned that the number of driving tests being taken in the West Midlands has dropped significantly in the last year. The region saw nearly 17,000 fewer tests taken in the year up to March 2013 compared with the year before.
Pass rates remain the same for both years at around 47%. The cost for learning to drive is now thought to be more than £2,700. Joe Lobo spent the day at a school for young drivers in Birmingham.
You happy with that? That's all checked, is it? Okay, good one.
For many, learning to drive at the age of 17 is part of growing up. But ITV News has found that in the last year, there's been a drop of more than 10% in the number of tests being taken in the Midlands.
I'm having to work here every weekend to save up for a couple of lessons. All my friends as well, they're having to find jobs to get lessons.
So how much does it actually cost to learn how to drive? Well, first, of course, you've got to get your provisional licence.
That's going to cost you £50. It's recommended by the government that you take 47 hours of tuition at an average of £24 a lesson. That will set you back more than £1,100. On top of that, it's advised you take 22 hours of private practice. That will cost on average more than £1,400. Your driving theory test costs £31 a go. And for each practical test you take, you'll be charged £75 on weekday evenings and weekends.
And that's a total of more than £2,700. All that money just to drive one of these.
One of the biggest concerns is the cost of insurance for new drivers. Many are being put off, which is affecting business for instructors.
Business has dropped off a little bit. It's unfortunate to say that a lot of the time I think this is due to insurance. The higher insurances are stopping especially teenagers from getting a car. They're thinking it's all very well taking lessons, spending that money, but then what's the point if I'm going to end up having to pay double for the insurance and everything afterwards?
But some parents are trying to start their children driving younger, hoping that it will work out cheaper in the future. The Young Drivers Scheme looks to help those between the ages of 11 and 17 learn to drive. They say training young people at an early age makes them better drivers.
I think it's an expensive treat for him, but it's an investment in the future because driving costs will only get more and more expensive.
With fewer people taking their driving tests each year, what was once a necessity is fast becoming a luxury. Joe Lobo, ITV News.
Other news, the founder of Midlands-based Pucker Pies has died at the age of 83. Trevor Storer started the company in his own kitchen 50 years ago. The company now employs more than 300 people in its factory in Syston in Leicestershire. Pucker Pies released a statement saying he will always be remembered as a true gentleman.
Well, still to come on ITV News Central, the meteor shower that lit up the Midlands skies.
And I'll be here with your weather forecast for the next few days and find out if you'll catch a shooting star tonight. The details coming up.
A church in Warwickshire is among 35 across the country to be awarded a grant of thousands of pounds from the Heritage Lottery Fund. The Church of St Peter's in Granborough will receive nearly £160,000 to help fund urgent repair works on its belfry openings, tower staircase and external elevations.
Other churches in Derby and Leicestershire are also getting a slice of the fund, and you can find out more on those on our website at itv.com/ Central.
Our most pressing need is to repair the mullions in the belfry. They are at the point of collapse, and we've strapped them up with scaffolding poles. And we would like to be able to take people up the tower and show them the magnificent views that we've got over the countryside round about here. And of course, that means we've got to get the repairs done to the stairwell.
Just a reminder that ITV News Central is once again joining forces with the Daily Mirror to find the individual you think deserves to be crowned our local hero 2013. But time is running out. You've only got a few days left to nominate that special person. I think it actually ends on Friday night at midnight, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So get thinking. We're looking for people who go that extra mile to be a real force for good in their neighbourhoods. Here's Lee Comley with more details.
Our local winner will attend the star-studded awards ceremony in London in October, when the overall local hero winner for the UK will be unveiled. Last year, our local winner was Kathy Coe, a former victim of domestic abuse. She used this experience to set up the Pathway project in Lichfield.
So this is all about people who make a real difference to the lives of those around them. But if you're still looking for some inspiration about who to choose, we've asked some local people about who in their lives they would nominate.
My niece's husband has done a lot of work in raising money for the Birmingham Children's Hospital.
He's employed by the emergency biker paramedics, and I would really like to nominate the fella because the work he does is outstanding.
Well, I would nominate him, yeah. I'd nominate him, and because he's, you know, he's good for charity. Yeah.
I like to help anyway, any way I can.
A bit of inspiration for you there, but remember the clock is ticking. You've only got until midnight on Friday to get those nominations in. So here's how you can do it.
Follow the link to apply by going to itv.com/Pride of Britain. You can also pick up a nomination form at Lidl stores. Full terms and conditions can be found at itv.com, and nominations close at midnight this Friday, the 16th of August.
Friday's the deadline, remember. Now, this year marks the 125th anniversary of the Football League, and ever since the opening day on September the 8th, 1888, Aston Villa's Gershom Cox has been credited with scoring the first ever goal.
But sporting history has just been rewritten after it emerged a Bolton Wanderers player by the name of Kenny Davenport was in fact the first to find the back of the net. Daniel Hewitt reports.
This is football as it looked in 1898, a Football League match between Blackburn Rovers and West Bromwich Albion. It's thought to be the oldest match footage anywhere in the world, filmed a decade after the birth of the game's oldest league competition. For 125 years, history had credited this man, Aston Villa's Gershom Cox, with scoring the league's first ever goal, an own goal, against Wolverhampton Wanderers on September the 8th, 1888. That was until football historian Mark Metcalf found a newspaper advert from the day showing that game kicked off half an hour later than previously thought.
What this meant is that Gershom Cox's goal on that particular day was a 4 o'clock goal, and the first goal, therefore, looking at the other newspapers, would have certainly been Kenny Davenport of Bolton Wanderers, who scored at 3:47 p.m. on Saturday, September the 8th, 1888 at Pikes Lane in Bolton.
And it's here, where 125 years ago, Davenport made football history. This is the site of Bolton's old Pikes Lane football ground. The pitch where that goal was scored is long ago buried underneath these cobbles. In fact, along these streets there is nothing that even acknowledges what happened here. The only plaque on the walls is one that warns local children that football is banned. But there are now plans to add a very different plaque here, one that recognises the original King Kenny. But this king lived in no palace. Davenport was a Bolton lad who worked in factories and lived in houses, no different to Bolton fans, a man who would walk to the games with Bolton supporters.
It's the biggest goal probably scored ever. League football revolutionised football. Every club, every country in the world now has a league, and it's important, I feel, because it was a proper goal and not an own goal.
A proper goal that history had forgotten, but one that will now always be remembered. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
Remarkable old footage, wasn't it?
Isn't it brilliant? The Midlands is regarded, of course, as the home of Britain's motor industry, and today a special set of stamps celebrating 6 much-loved British cars went on sale.
And the Royal Mail have sent us a set, a rather large set. The collection features a 1961 Jaguar E-Type, built in Coventry of course, and a 1968 Morgan, made in Morven in Worcestershire. The other stamps in the collection, well, we've got a 1965 Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, there she is, and a 1963 Aston Martin. They all appear on the first class stamps. And we've got a 1962 MGB, a 1968 Morgan, and all the rest. We've got some of them here. They're fabulous,
that's
actually,
our
aren't they?
favourite, isn't it?
That is our favourite. It's, of course, the E-Type, once described by Enzo Ferrari himself as the most beautiful car ever made, and who could argue with that?
Absolutely. He couldn't quite get there with the Ferrari, could he?
But
and what's this one, Bob?
That's a Morgan. It's a +8. It was a fantastic car, still is a fantastic car. They dropped a 3.5 litre engine into that to really make it go, and it goes like a rocket. Terrific. Yeah.
I've been learning about these all afternoon from Bob. He is the expert. We've got an MGB there.
Such a pretty car, that, yeah, I like that one. And then we've got the Rolls-Royce. The thing is, they're not all West Midlands made cars, but most of the bits and pieces on them were made in the West Midlands. Interesting car, that, actually, very much ahead of its time, that was at the time. Why are you laughing?
Because you know so much.
Well, I know,
I'm learning.
Yes, it had disc brakes as opposed to the old drum brakes, and pneumatic suspension, all sorts of things. I could bore you to death with it. I am boring you to death.
No, you're not. No, you're not. We are joined in the studio now, though, by Lucy, who has to tell us about the weather.
Yes, this
I
is
have to
far more
interrupt
exciting
you. I'm
than
sorry,
cars,
Lucy.
isn't it?
Tell us about meteors. I didn't get to see any.
I know.
Tried
Well,
so hard.
nature's firework display did its thing last night, didn't it? With spectacular style. It was the pursued meteor shower, and it happens every year actually, from mid-July to mid-August. But it reached its peak last night. And for some stargazers, they saw up to around 60 shooting stars an hour. Now, we had perfect conditions across our region. We saw some clear spells, so people were tweeting me all night, sending me their pictures. In fact, I've got a couple of pictures.
You didn't see any of it, though, did you?
I actually didn't see any of it. I was staring at the sky but couldn't
looking
see
in the wrong direction,
anything.
obviously.
So I looked down at Twitter, I looked at my phone. But Karen Stiles in Walsall sent us this picture, and we've got one from Steve Adams as well, from Kimberley in Nottinghamshire. And we've got some brilliant moving pictures as well, which were sent to us from the UK Meteor Network in Portsmouth. So brilliant, brilliant evening. And we might even see a few more shooting stars tonight, but we just need the right conditions. So let's find out what's happening with the weather. Here you go.
This'll keep your ears warm, but you can't hear anything. It's 4:30.
Well, cloudy skies in tonight's weather picture. We've seen rather a lot of cloud roll in through today. You can see here on the satellite and radar that cloud approaching overnight last night and making its way in a southeasterly direction. We've seen a few spots of rain here and there as well, but that rain will clear as we head through the next few hours, and we'll see some clear skies as well developing. So patchy cloud overnight tonight. Good news if you are thinking of stargazing. You should have some luck as we head through tonight. Midnight, the best time to start looking upwards and spotting the shooting stars. So then, temperatures tonight dipping to 9 or 10 degrees Celsius, feeling quite fresh once again. Tomorrow, some sunny spells on offer first thing. They won't last for long though. The cloud is going to build from the west once again. So it's going to turn cloudy in the afternoon, and the cloud thick enough in places to produce a few spots of light rain or drizzle. Feeling warmer tomorrow though. Highs of around 21 degrees Celsius.
Flybe, sponsors of ITV Central Weather.
Suffering from hay fever? ITV Pollen Count is sponsored by Benadryl.
Well, in the sunny spells, pollen levels will be moderate, but in the cloud and with the showery rain, we are expecting them to dip to low. Have a nice evening. See you later.
Before we go, Nottinghamshire Paralympic champion Richard Whitehead has started his 40 marathons in 40 days challenge.
Raji Popat sent this report on day one. from John O'Groats.
An iconic location for the start of an epic journey. Richard Whitehead set off from John O'Groats this morning. The Paralympic champion is on a mission to run to Land's End. That's 26 miles every day over 40 days.
As you can see, the crowds are out. There's about 12 or 13 cows on your left-hand side, a couple of rabbits on your right. Obviously, this is more of a personal challenge against mind over matter.
Richard hopes to raise £1 million for Sarcoma UK, a bone cancer charity, and Scope, which helps people with disabilities. Day one was completed with ease. He'll arrive at Land's End on September the 23rd and is encouraging as many people as possible to join him in Scotland and England. Rajiv Poppert, ITV News in the Highlands.
39 more days to go.
Brilliant. Good luck.
Absolutely. That's
I'll
it
see
from
you
us.
at 10:30.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.